Well, good morning, beautiful people. Hope you're doing well, and howdy ho, neighbor. Hope you're doing okay and enjoying the end to your week. You made it. It's Friday, baby. It's a feel good Friday. And I have to admit, I saw what Donald Trump did yesterday in pulling the tariffs a second time off of Canada, at least 95% of them. And I decided, you know what? I want to do the same thing. I know I promised that I'd be given the Sam Cooper video. Something big happened last night. I legitimately feel terrible, but I'm making a I am promising. I know I broke my last promise, but then I promised this one. I promised this one. I've actually dedicated Saturday will be the day for that video. 100%, you have my word. If I break that one, disown me. Unsubscribe. I understand. I totally get it. But some big news happened in the conservative world last night. Some news I think is really important to get out. I think it is important to be able to get the specific message out because conservatives are fighting to a degree. The conversation that took place last night was Patrick Bet-David, who runs a very popular podcast called the PBD Podcast, and it's over 2.5 million subscribers. And they've had some big names come on their show at various points. And PBD had some words for Pierre Poilievre. He's not happy with how he's been conducting his campaign and made sure to make him known of it. And we'll watch the episode, we'll watch a couple of the clips, and we'll come back to it and how the conservatives here in Canada, at least in the alternative media world, are addressing it and reacting to it. And then what my reaction is to it. If you were on the live show with us last night, you have an idea what me and Reds think about it. But here's a more formal video about it and the firestorm it has created here in the Canadian political media world.
Think about who, as a world leader, has a shittier resume than him and a worse approval rating. The fact that people are done with him. Mm-hmm. And even with that, Pierre Poilievre couldn't beat him.
That's what's the sad part.
But you know why it's not sad? Because every time we invited Pierre, arrogant, pompous team, the only podcast he ever did is Jordan Peterson. So let me get this straight. You saw Millet win because he went everywhere. You saw Bukele win, he went everywhere. You saw Trump win because he went everywhere. You saw Bobby win because he went everywhere. You saw Vivek become a superstar because he went everywhere. And you don't, you deserve losing. And you didn't win. And I said that to Canadians who love him. The candidate you adore and admire and love doesn't want to work. God forbid he has to cross the border and go talk to other borders to bring attention.
Self-employed in Canada?
Mother trucker. Why
Protect your small business with Zensurance.
God forbid too much travel time. He's got to eat his apple. He's got to eat his apple because he's got to get his apple in his system. Go to New York, do a damn podcast outside of Jordan Peterson. Go to Joe Rogan's podcast. Go to some other podcast and talk to Lex. Go talk to whatever these other podcasts are. Go talk to Andrew Schultz down the street from you in New York. And you lost to Justin. You couldn't beat him. That's embarrassing. So that's the part also, Vinny, where the opposition is so arrogant and confident that they're going to win that they lose. How many clips did we see of Pierre going viral?
A bunch. Oh.
Rob, just go type in his name.
And they go on to the rest of this clip to talk about how Pierre Poilievre, his viral clips. And before we kind of get to the last part of this tirade, he brings up a couple things, right? You keep losing to Justin Trudeau. You lost to him. And so take this for the grain of salt it is, right? This is an American podcaster who doesn't really fully know Canadian politics. He just recently got interested because of the tariff war that's happening between Trudeau and Trump. And so he's now putting his own voice. He's heard about this Pierre Poilievre character. He's seen some of his videos. He likes what he's seen. He likes the messaging that comes from Pierre. And then him coming in saying, yeah, you keep losing to Trudeau. It's like, not quite accurate. Pierre's never lost to Trudeau. Pierre just took leadership of the party just about 3 years ago. He's never gone to a general election against Trudeau. He may be referring to the fact that Conservatives have lost to him, the past 3 times, and that's a different issue and another scenario to deal with. But the crux of the issue is still true. It feels like there's a bit of saltiness coming from PBD here, saying that Pierre didn't do his podcast. He's like, go somewhere, he says. Like, you need to start getting your voice out. You need to start working. You need to start putting the effort in. You start ba. And there's some things I want to clear up from a Canadian perspective. Pierre has been working very hard. He's done over 600 events in the past year. He's been on the ground. He's been talking to people. He's been trying to get into the grassroots to discuss what's been going on. The core of the criticism is true, though, where we haven't seen him going on the podcasts. We haven't seen him trying to get into the alternative media space too much. He's dabbled in it, but not a whole heck of a lot. And this is the frustration that some people are feeling, is that they haven't seen him on these outlets. From my understanding with how his team operates and how things operate in the Conservative Party, a lot of this also isn't totally on him. His media team right now, the Conservative media team, is, I admit, they're playing not to lose at the moment. The way it comes across, not saying this is true, the way it comes across, though, is the fact that they're scared that the Liberals are going to point at them and call them names. Because we know that Pierre plays at a very different set of rules than the rest of the political class in Ottawa. Trudeau can go on CNN. Carney can go on BBC and also CNN. Freeland can go on these talk shows. They're allowed to do that and not get criticized for it and being un-Canadian. But the minute Poilievre does that, he will be 100% branded as being un-Canadian. But this goes back to my point is they're playing not to lose. They need to start playing to win. To say, you know what, screw you, we're going to go put it down your throat. And we need to win and we need to do whatever we can to go out and win. And from what I've heard, again, they're not averse to doing more podcasts. They're not averse to doing more alternative media. They're just waiting. We don't know what they're waiting for, but they're waiting. Waiting and seeing. As Reg said on the live show last night, myself included, we give a lot of credit to Rick Perkins coming in on the show and discussing his perspective on what's going on within the Conservative Party, but as well as going on in Canada and how things operate in the House of Commons, yada, yada, yada. Very much like there's people that disagree with what he said and there's people that agree with what he said, but that's the good thing. That's the point of sharing knowledge and sharing perspectives is so we can have the best country possible. And we need to see more of that from the core that is going to be surrounding Pierre Poilievre. We want to see more Jamil Javani. We want to see more Melissa Lantsman. We want to see more Leslyn Lewis. In addition, we also want to see more of Pierre Poilievre in these different spaces. And as I said, it's not totally wrong. The spirit of what PBD is saying here is not totally wrong. There's some details he got incorrect, but it does speak to the fact that the media team or the Conservative Party needs to start playing to win and not playing not to lose. And that's kind of how it's communicated. Not saying that's what's happening. That's how it's being communicated. But then we go to the second part of this tirade and kind of Patrick Bet-David completely and utterly doubles down on this notion and goes right at Pierre Poilievre's throat.
All the way to the top if you could. And just type in podcast next to him. And do me a favor, eliminate his first name, just put Poilievre podcast and go to filters and go to views. And let's see what podcast he's done. Okay, zoom in.
18?
So Jordan Peterson, 2 months go 5 million. He needs to do that once every other month. Okay, keep going lower. Specific to podcast. Keep going. That's another Jordan Peterson from 2 years ago. It's the only one he does. Keep going lower. Keep going lower.
None.
Keep going lower.
He's eating an
keep
apple.
going lower. Keep going lower.
Nothing.
Keep going lower.
Nothing.
Keep going lower. Another Jordan Peterson. Keep going lower. Keep going lower. Keep going lower. Other people are talking about him. Yeah. So guess what? You can be as talented as you want and as strong as you want, and you think you've won without earning the right to win. You don't believe in capitalism. You just want it to be handed to you. I'm sorry, Canadians. You need a better candidate that's willing to work their asses off to make Canada great again. And this guy didn't want to work. I watched him give messages. I'm like, what a great message. Get your ass in front of cameras. Didn't want to do it. Go talk to people. Pierre Poilievre campaigned the same exact way as Kamala Harris did. When it comes down to campaigning, not policies, he is Kamala Harris. Pierre, your hero that you guys wanted, does not want to work. I hope Canadians see this and send it around and blast him and encourage him to go talk to the biggest podcast in Canada. He's not too good for podcasts in Canada. He's only talking to Jordan Peterson. Go talk to the people. You say you want to be a man of the people? Go be the man of the people. That's what Milei did. That's what others did. Locked up behind camera just talking to Jordan Peterson and mainstream type of people. This is 2025. A 78-year-old man did laps around you. And he went and took it from the other guys with all the games they played. You just want to sit there and play easy. Very disappointed. The reason why I'm disappointed is because I love the people of Canada.
So there you go. This is causing, has caused a bit of a stir in social media. We go over to X, and Marty up north posted, Pierre Poilievre, are you listening? And we see some of the comments. Moose on the Loose, David, says, Pierre is just getting himself separated from Trump and his numbers are going back up. Going on a podcast who just interviewed Andrew Tate isn't going to help. It's going to hurt him. Pierre should get out and do more podcasts, though. Tracy Wilson makes the same point about them interviewing Andrew Tate. Jade says, I've always agreed with this guy, but Pierre is Canadian. Why does he have to go to America to make his point? Going on those podcasts won't help him. They'll hurt him. The TDS is insanely strong in Canada with conservatives. Wyatt Claypool says, PBD is honestly not a podcast to go on. It's a podcast run by a guy who just wants to do big interviews and honestly has no intellectual substance to speak on. He's a clout chase and populist bandwagon rider. And then we'll just shout out T. Lynn here because, I'm a little selfish. I do hope his social media team shows him this. The Elevate podcast just had a great one with Nova Scotia MP. It was an eye-opening to watch. Pierre does need to tone down that after 9 years of Carney Trudeau, it gets old real fast before he goes on any podcast, lol. But this is kind of the conversation that's happening right now in the conservative space. Is this the right thing to do? Is it the wrong thing to do? I think people are coming to the agreement on is that he just needs to do more podcasts in Canada. I tend to be of the agreement that the TDS is very strong in Canada. We are so indoctrinated by our media here that the minute Poilievre puts a toe over the border, he's getting blown out of the water. So I don't think, people are going back and forth. I think even the Pleb brought this up. Pleb even posted, should Pierre Poilievre go on the Joe Rogan podcast? And I understand the perspective and I get it because the Liberals are doing it. The NDP are doing it. I understand. The problem is because of the way our media landscape is built in this country, people are so easily swayed by the CBCs of the world, CTVs, that the minute he does this, he gets branded a Trump supporter. He gets branded, which right now, obviously with all the tariff issues, is reactive right now. It's not going to help him. However, I do agree with the point, okay, but you need to double down and going and do an alternative media in the country. Go and doing shows like Northern Perspectives, ourselves, Jasmine Lane, Clyde. I know a lot of these shows are really interested in having him on. And again, as I said, I do know from what I've heard, they are very interested. The appetite is there in the Conservative Party, but they're waiting. They're waiting. From my understanding, they're likely waiting for an election campaign to start, and then they're going to go right on in, which I hope they do. However, I also don't think it would be negative to start beforehand, get a running start on this, and get your message out there. I think it is desperately important. And as much as we have a wide variety of demographics we reach with our shows, there is a large portion of our demographic too that is that older generation that is voting liberal right now. You can reach them. And at the same time, we need to continue to reach the younger people who are very much leaning more conservative these days. And we need to make sure that they are getting out to vote. So getting out and having your messaging. And the last little bit, if any of it, I have, political advice I could give is just the moment the conservatives do go on these podcasts, the Jamils of the world, Melissa, Pierre himself, Michael Barrett, Rick Perkins, is just go be people. Go be people. I'm going to show one clip that took place for the Halifax-based podcast here in Nova Scotia, who had Chrystia Freeland on. And I'll just give you a vibe with the approach I think the Conservatives need to take when they start going on their media blast.
Your experiences with the KGB. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is...
That makes it sound a little... like Game of Thrones, KGB.
That's where exactly.
I think that's a very good transition.
Yeah, secret police.
Don't diss the guy who actually came into the studio this morning.
Yeah, Jesse. I'm dressed.
I stayed home.
But like it or not, I know most people watching the show aren't the most fond of Chrystia Freeland. But in that clip, she comes across very likable. And that is something I think the Conservatives need to take pretty seriously as they move forward as well, is yes, we're dealing with a very important election coming up, dealing with some very serious issues, but it's going to be okay to crack a joke. It's okay to crack a smile and be with the people. If you want this grassroots approach, be with the people, laugh with the people, still talk about some serious issues, but have some fun. I can say that Rick Perkins was able to do that with us on our show, and it meant a lot to our listeners and meant a lot to us. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Let me know in the comments what you think. I know the Conservatives are very split on this whole issue. Let me know what the Poilievre campaign should be doing, what you want to see them do, and I'll catch you later. See you this afternoon. I'm out.